Minister has told us that we have to learn, and we are going to learn a lot with this keynote speech. We are going to do it in English. So if you need interpretation, translation into Spanish, you have a QR code in the program here. You can download the app, and you can also take some headsets there if you need them, so you can listen to all the speech in Spanish. We have this person coming from Palo Alto, Stanford, in the United States. Professor Mark Jacobson is going to be interviewed by Daniel Bachande in order to talk about how to make a transition towards renewable energy without miracles. So, Daniel Bachande, please, you have the floor in order to introduce the speaker here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for being here, authorities, Minister of Industry. Thank you for everyone for being here. It's a pleasure to be once again in Foro Sella. Today we're going to have a conversation with California with Professor Mark Jacobson, current professor at Stanford University. Professor Mark Jacobson has focused on better understanding air pollution, global climate solutions, and all the problems related to climate change. He has developed roadmaps to transition countries, states, towns, and cities, and also in Spain. He has also written several books, and one of his most famous books is called No Miracles Needed, in which he argues that we already have the technology in order to move forward in the transition process, but what we need is willpower and collective will in order to make that happen. Mr. Jacobson, thank you for joining here. Good morning from Aragon.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay, great. So
Great.
I was just saying, thank you very much, Daniel, for inviting me, and thank you, Minister Hiro, for that very inspirational speech. I really liked it.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, Mark Jacobson. If you want, we're going to start the conversation. I would like to ask you, you have several papers published regarding Spanish energy system, as well as analyzing the energy situation. From your work, for everything that you have done so far, what does 100% clean, renewable energy system look for Spain, and what role can Aragon play in this transition?
Okay, yes, so we've developed plans for 149 countries, including Spain, and these plans all involve transitioning all energy sectors, and the main sectors are electricity, transportation, buildings, and industry, transitioning to 100% clean, renewable energy for everything. So, for example, for transportation, we'd go to battery electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for long-distance heavy transport. For buildings, we'd go to electric heat pumps and electric induction cooktops. Heat pumps would be for air heating, water heating, air conditioning, even clothes drying. We'd use LED lights, more insulation. For industry, we'd go to high temperature. For high temperature industrial processes, we'd use electric arc furnaces, induction furnaces, resistance furnaces, electron beam heaters, all run on electricity, and we'd even use fire bricks for heat storage. And we'd power the so we'd electrify all energy sectors as much as possible and provide that electricity with just wind, water, and solar, which includes onshore and offshore wind, solar photovoltaics on rooftops and in power plants, concentrated solar power, geothermal electricity and heat, and hydroelectricity primarily. Now, for Spain, we've calculated that we can power Spain for all purposes. If we electrified Spain and powered it for all purposes with just wind, water, solar, first of all, energy requirements would go down about 58%. That's because of the efficiency of electricity over combustion. For example, electric vehicles use 1/4 the energy as internal combustion engine vehicles. Electric heat pumps use about 1/4 the energy as gas heaters for heating buildings. When you look at all the electricity savings over combustion, and you factor in the elimination of energy needed to mine, transport, and refine fossil fuels and uranium, since we wouldn't need those anymore for energy, and energy efficiency improvements, we get a 58% reduction of energy requirements in Spain. And that would result also in an annual cost reduction of about 64% compared with a business as usual case. And what would Spain look like? It'd be powered primarily by, it would be about 45% wind, mostly onshore, but also offshore, maybe a third to 40% of that offshore wind. And then most of the rest would be solar, photovoltaics primarily on both rooftops and utility scale solar, with about 7% hydropower, which is already existing. So we would not be adding any new hydropower. And the cost, as I mentioned, would go down, but the upfront capital cost of such a transition, we calculate it's about $300 billion. However, because you're saving each year huge, tens of billions of dollars, we calculate that the payback time of a transition on energy costs alone is about 4 years. And when you account for the health cost savings, because there are about 8,600 people who die from air pollution in Spain each year, and those deaths would be eliminated from energy. And there are a lot of people who are ill. And when we calculate the health cost savings and also the climate cost savings, along with the energy cost savings, the payback time is less than 1 year in terms of social cost. We create 200,000 more long-term full-time jobs than lost in Spain. And the amount of land use would be on the order of about 0.6 to 7% of Spain's land area for the wind and solar primarily onshore. So there's really no downside to such a transition. Aragon is already playing a huge role in the renewable energy transition. As the minister said, over 80% of electricity generation is already from wind and solar. And that can go up to even 100% for electricity. And then if we transition all the other sectors, there's going to be more electricity needed. And Aragon can definitely provide that electricity with a combination of solar and wind. So I think the future looks bright for Spain. The transition is already happening. It's really a question of just building up more and more and more.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. The next question, we would like to know, one of the main challenges is to maintain energy security as we advance in renewable energies presence in the energy system. How can the grid be kept stable with lots of intermittent renewable energies? What can be done?
Well, there are many ways to keep the grid stable with intermittent renewables. I mean, solar and wind, of course, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. But when you combine solar and wind together, they actually reduce the variability because solar and wind are often complementary in nature. When the sun is not shining during the day, it's often windy, and vice versa. When it's not windy during the day, the sun is often shining because of the pressure systems. Now, also interconnecting geographically dispersed wind and solar also smoothens out the overall supply of wind power or solar power. In combination, batteries are in hydroelectric power storage. I mean, Spain has a lot of hydroelectric power that can be used as storage already, but the growth of batteries right now in California's grid, for example, there are 10 gigawatts of batteries, and that can provide up to almost 40% of the average power that's being used in all seasons except for summer. But point is that battery costs are coming down, and batteries are much better than gas for backup because they respond in only 20 milliseconds. Gas takes 5 minutes to go from 0 to 100% power. And batteries, you don't need to keep them running like you do gas plants, and they don't cause pollution. So a combination of storage, geographically interconnecting wind and solar, and also using what's called demand response, utilities having different prices of electricity at different times of the day to incentivize shifting people's use of electricity towards times when, for example, you have a lot of sunlight. So that's another method. You're also going to be connected to the rest of Europe. So if, for example, if there is a day when you have low solar and wind and you don't have enough storage, certainly you can also still import as you do right now from out of country. But building up storage, and also when you electrify all energy sectors, that creates more what are called flexible loads that you can shift with demand response. Like you don't need to connect a wind turbine to an electric vehicle. You can charge the vehicle any time of day or night, and so you can charge it optimally when you do have sunlight or wind. Anyway, there are 7 countries in the world that are 100% renewable in the annual average, and they don't have problems with grid stability.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. You have developed different roadmaps to 100% renewable energies. What lessons can we learn from other countries, particularly the United States and the state of California, in your opinion?
Well, I'll start with California because it's really remarkable. Actually, for the last 46 days in a row, California's main grid has been generating more than 100% of its demand with just wind, water, and solar. So that's onshore wind, in this case, utility solar, rooftop solar, geothermal electricity, and hydroelectricity. And in fact, it's gone up to 160% on one day, above 150% on several other days of demand. So what happens to the extra electricity on those days? Well, half of it goes to batteries and half is exported to out of state. And this is happening during the day because of this big growth of solar in particular. And at night, we're not getting to 100% yet, but the nighttime demand is about between 30 and 50% wind and water and solar. And another 10 to 30% is being filled with battery storage at night that's powered during the day. So this has not only happened the last 46 days in a row straight, where anywhere from up to 10 hours a day, we've had over 100% renewables, but it's also for last 70 out of the last 76 days. And we expect this to go on at least for another month and a half. In summer, the demand is expected to go up significantly due to air conditioning use. So we'll see if we can keep that streak going. But as I mentioned, there are other countries and regions, like South Australia is getting closer and closer to 100% renewables as well. And there are 7 countries that are 100% renewables in the annual average. Now, granted, these are dominated by hydropower, but some are mixed, like Iceland is a combination of hydropower, geothermal, and some wind. And other countries are close, like Kenya, which is around 92% renewables in the annual average. It's almost dominated by geothermal. Scotland within the UK reaches over 100% renewable regularly, dominated by wind. In the United States, there are actually several states that have even more penetration of renewables than California. South Dakota provides 96% of its demand for electricity in the annual average from just wind and hydropower, primarily wind. In fact, there are 7 states that have more renewables than California in terms of the fraction of their electricity generation. And most of those states are dominated by wind power. And these states, the electricity grid is staying stable.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. In order to sum up and end the conversation, if we already have the technology we need to advance towards a 100% renewable energy system, according to your book, what are some of the barriers that we are facing right now in order to achieve that objective?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot of good things happening, and most of the focus is correctly on clean renewable energy. In the United States, we have what's called the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really incentivizing a lot of clean renewable energy. But unfortunately, about 40% of the funding in the Inflation Reduction Act goes to technologies that I think are not helping to solve the problems that we face. Specifically, and they're specifically funding projects that are driven by the fossil fuel industry or the nuclear industry or the agricultural industry, rather just to kind of keep fossil fuels going or to benefit those industries rather than actually address climate, air pollution, and energy security. For example, carbon capture, direct air capture, blue hydrogen, and electrofuels. These are all technologies that are driven by the fossil fuel industry and they benefit the industries, but they don't benefit climate or air pollution or energy security. And I don't really have time to go into details. We do think green hydrogen is good, which is hydrogen produced from clean renewable electricity and used for steel production, ammonia production, long distance transport, and even some grid electricity storage, but not blue hydrogen, which is from natural gas with carbon capture. And also bioenergy is driven by the agricultural industry, and that's not helping. It still creates air pollution. The carbon accounting is very questionable in terms of how much, whether it's beneficial or not, and requires huge amounts of land and water supply as well. And of course, the nuclear industry is pushing for funding for more nuclear reactors, although the only reactors built in the United States in the last 30 years were just built. They took 17 and 18 years respectively from planning to operation. They cost $35 billion. That's $16 a watt. A new solar is 70 cents or $0.7 a watt. So, and the levelized cost of new solar and wind is about or nuclear is about 8 times more than nuclear or wind. So you have a technology that's going to take 15 years longer to install and plan and cost times more. So it's not useful, but it's being funded, and new advanced reactors are no different. So I think the thing is we need to focus on what works, keep our eye on the ball, focus on technologies that already are working and we know are clean, we know are renewable, we know are sustainable, and that can be implemented quickly at low cost. Unfortunately, wind, solar, batteries, battery electric vehicles, heat pumps, they're all coming down in cost and are being implemented on a large scale. And so we need to focus on these technologies and just keep ramping up, as we see in California and many other places, and in Spain. In fact, there's the more and more growth of these technologies. We're just seeing that the costs that it does benefit in terms of costs, although some places there are other factors affecting costs. But yeah, just keep our focus on the ball, and I think we will solve the problems together.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jacobson. It has been a pleasure to have you here in Aragon discussing energy transition. And we will keep on going with the debate and with the event because we have a very wide experts that will be talking about energy transition. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.